I'm pleased to introduce you. Dr. Ahmed is currently working with the Energy Commission of Nigeria, or ECN, as the Acting Director of Energy Policy Planning and Analysis Department, or EPPA. And as such, he plays a key role in formulating policies and plans in the energy sector in Nigeria. Thank you.
Second here, see if I can make this work properly.
Can I go?
Sure. I think Dan is getting the slides to look pretty. I see the slide and all the future slides, Dan, just FYI. But sure, I think you're welcome to move forward and talking.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Ahmed from Energy Commission. I'm supposed to present this presentation with James Ogule. He's with me as a participant. Well, next slide, please. While the two major government agencies responsible for climate change and energy planning are the Climate Change Department of the Federal Minister of Environment and the Energy Commission of Nigeria. The main mandate of the DTC is to coordinate activities towards national implementation of the Climate Change Convention with ultimate objectives to stabilize the greenhouse gases and to make any changes in regards to the climate change. And they are the agency implementing the climate change activity in line with the UNFCCC. And they are now leading the energy transition for Nigeria. While the Energy Commission, the statutory mandate of the Energy Commission is the strategic planning and coordination of national policies in the field of energy in all ramifications. So by this, the ECN is empowered to make planning and is empowered to advise the government on the diversification of energy resources, which include the introduction of new and alternative energy. Next, please. Next slides, please. These are the key NDC parameter for Nigeria, and you can see from the left map of Nigeria showing the key parameters. First is the 20% conditional and the 45% unconditional reduction. And this commitment can be done by reforestation, climate smart agri, shift to buses, from car to buses, improve electricity grid, then the energy efficiency, that is 30% energy efficiency, and introduction of the off-grid, addition of about 13 gigawatts of grid from solar, and ending of gas flaring by 2030. The objective of this something the conditional target now has been reviewed from 45% to 47%. That is from the business as usual production. And the mitigation sectors are power, oil and gas, agriculture, and industry. And the adaptation component has to do with this. Next slides, please. Well, last year, the government updates the NDC, and this revised NDC, the government expanded the sector from 5 to 7 sector with the addition of waste and water sectors. And the revised NDC has an enhancement of mitigation ambition from a number of factors. This includes the inclusion of waste sector in the greenhouse gas emission assessment, the inclusion of mitigation of the SLCP, that is the short-lived climate pollutant, which include the black carbon, methane, and the HFCs. And the substantial expansion and strengthening of the mitigation action beyond those include in the initial NDCs of 2015. And the revised NDC has been expanded its gas from the 3 gases to 13 gases. And also it includes a lot of elements like the gender mainstreaming. Women are more vulnerable to these greenhouse gases. So that is why the gender mainstreaming is added. The green job assessment, the just transition, vulnerability for mapping nature-based solution, then introduction of the clean cooking stove, the cooling efficiency, and an updated baseline from the 2010, initial 2010 now to now 2018. And all this include issues of forestry. The revised NDC has unconditional contribution of 20% below business as usual by 2030. However, it has increased the conditional contribution from 45 to 47%. And the government has started integrating the current NDC's target in its own economic and medium-term development plan, which is from 2021 to 2025. Please, the next slides. Next. Okay. Well, the mitigation priorities include the increased availability of zinc. The government is trying to develop, use the forest as a carbon sink, and reducing the level of emissions into the atmosphere by sectors such as the energy sector, energy generation, that is the power generation sector, the oil and gas, the AFOLO, which is the agri forest and other land use, the transport and mining activities too, all have to be reduced. This is just a percentage showing the contribution of the current GHG emission. The energy sector contribute about 60%, then followed by the agri sector, 16%, the forestry and the land use has about 9%, then the waste to have a high percentage. The contribution of the energy sector, the highest emission is from the oil and gas, which is about 36% contributing to the energy sector in Nigeria. Next, please. Next slide. These are the mitigation plan by sector. Taking the residential sector, the plan is to increase use of gas up to 2030, and improvement of cook stock by 2030, and elimination of use of kerosene by 2030. In the energy efficiency sector, the plan is to have about 2.5% reduction in energy intensity across all sectors. That is within the 10-year or between 2015 to 2030. And the transport sector is to roll more of buses. That is about 100,000 buses, and to increase the movement of passenger kilometer. And there is a shift in production of gas, that is CNG, for the trucks and the buses by 2050. The electricity sector, part of the plan is to have at least 30% of the on-grid to be from renewable sources. That is solar and wind. In addition to 3.5 gigawatts from the small and the 6.5 gigawatts of the small and large hydro. Also, the government is planning to have about 12.5 gigawatts of non-grid, that is the mini grid, by 2060. In the oil and gas, the government is planning to have a zero gas flaring by 2060 and reduce fugitive methane emission by 2031. In the agricultural sector, the government is trying to have a clean and smart agriculture to reduce all waste and emissions in this sector. In the forestry and all other use, increase forest protection, reduce use of wood for cooking and harvesting, and protection of the mangrove forest. The government is trying to develop carbon sink to absorb the emissions from other sectors. Next, please. Next slide, please. Okay, in the waste sector, there is a priority of 10% reduction of methane from the organic waste, and there is a plan to create PPPs to convert agricultural and gas and agricultural waste into animal feed, and also to use some of this agri waste to generate power, electricity. And in the industrial sector, there is a plan to reduce the emission in this sector, and one probably introduction of a carbon capture technology after 2035. And in the short-lived climate policy is to reduce all these black carbon methane and the HFCs emission very low percentage. Next, please. Next slide, please. Well, in Nigeria, we have used many modeling tools in making energy plants. We have used the IAEA modeling tools of message in making a projection. But the recent energy modeling tool that we use is the NZWAC 2050, which we had developed and launched just last month. And this in the NZWAC 2050 was developed based on the framework of the 2050 data. Its aim is to identify energy secured pathway for energy demand and supply. And objectives of the NZWAC 2050 is to help, that is government, business, and to understand the wide range of available for energy and development. And another of the objectives is to provide quantities of energy, demand, supply, and emissions. And you can use this NECA 2050 to facilitate a policy debate, because it's easier seeing that both the technocrats and the policy makers, is easier to see the wide range of pathways available. Next, please. This is the structure of the NECA 2050 model. Is based on the demographic, economy, and life span. That is the main assumption, and it uses economy and fuel, and it's driven by the lifestyle, that is diet, traveling, demand, mode, compartment, appliances use, and all. And it uses population and subdivided. That is a trend in urbanization, and also in user energy access. And this input are built into all these technologies and energy resources within the country. That is ranging from all the sector, the agri sector, the transport sector, the building sector, manufacturing sector. And the good advantage of the model too, it uses effect of trade and flows, like ships when bringing goods and taking it out, and international flight too. Next, please. And the model has 4 ambitious levels used in all creating these scenarios. The first level is the current ambition level, where the current existing policies, all the policies are taken care. And the second level is when more extensive use of existing technology is a little, if you are putting a less ambition level. The second one is if you have put more ambitious, and the last one is the transformational ambition that we feel that is the highest ambition that we feel we can go. Next slide, please. And these are just part of this program is to get net zero pathway for the country. We use the 2050 calculator to have just a similar something. You can see from the graph, the graph from my right shows the annual gas emission and is going towards net zero by 2050. Though Nigerian commitment is we will achieve a net zero by 2050. Next slide, please. Well, this is just to show how the electricity supply will be. And this is when we are going towards net zero. So the use of gas will reduce from 2035 up to and introduction of the CCS2 will commence by 2035. Introduction of nuclear from 2030 upward, but the bulk of energy mix will come from renewable energy, which solar is, we are aiming for solar. And the graph in the right is just showing if business as usual, the graph, the contribution of the fossil fuel will increase. But since we are now turning to net zero, you can see from 2040, that is when we will start decommissioning the reducing contribution of our gas. Because part of the policy of Nigeria is now to use the gas to uplift the energy generation up to 2040, and from 2040 up to 2060, that is when we will have the net zero. Next slide, please. This is just to show the greenhouse gas from that 2050 studies. Next slides, please. And this is just the contribution of each of the sector: the power generation sector, the transport sector, the building sector, and the industrial sector. These are all showing the emissions contribution of emission for each sector. If certain pathway is changed from maybe level 1 to level 4, you will see how the emissions are reducing. Next slide, please. One part of the Nigerian climate goal for the energy sector is to align the NDCs and the energy transition plan. The NDC is from now to 2030, while the ETP is a plan for 2060. The government have approved an energy transition plan, and it has set a committee headed by the Federal Ministry of Environment to lead in the energy transition plan. And this energy transition plan consists of all the stakeholders in the energy sector: the Energy Commission, the Ministry of Power, Petroleum, and the private sector too. And part of it is to the reduction will be more in power sector. Next, part of the energy transition plan is to have centralize production. Right now, energy mix, 75% of the energy mix is from the fossil fuel. But by 2060, the government is trying to have a net zero, and this will be contribution coming from solar, hydrogen, and other source. And you can see all the figure. The government is planning to build about 197 gigawatts of solar, though in this nuclear was not mentioned, but nuclear too is part of the technology that will be used in reducing or in achieving the net zero by 2050. And the down which is the decentralized sector, you can see in that 2020 most of the contribution is from the captive by diesel owners, but it will change with the introduction or development of mini grid and solar home system. And by 2050, the captive generation from the diesel generators is planning to cease up. Next slides, please. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for that really interesting and deep presentation. I've noticed that we've started to get some questions in the chat. And so I will share that first question, and please feel free, others, to drop another question or two in the chat before we transition to Indonesia. So we have a question that thanks you for the comprehensive presentation, and then asks how the analysis that you described in the presentation today with the 2050 calculator, how that links to the LEDs that Nigeria submitted to the UNFCCC at the end of last year. Was there a connection between the two? Thanks.
While the NECALA 2050 the submission that Nigeria did was made, an analysis was made by McKinsey in conjunction with collaboration with some stakeholders in Nigeria, like the Federal Ministry of Environment. And the NECALA 2052 will align with the McKinsey and future any future studies that we will align the NDCs, the ETP, because the NECALA 2050 is a robust and is a sector by sector in depth and an analysis of the decarbonization an analysis, and the NECAL 2050 was done in collaboration with the UK government, the Imperial College, and Clarmark, and the McDonald's, and we launched it last week, and is available online at necal.energy.gov.ng. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So I see there are other questions in the chat, but I think it might be helpful to move on to the Indonesian presentation, and then at the end, seeing how much time we have remaining, we can come back to a more complete discussion, just to make sure that we have time for both presenters. And I'd like to thank you very much again for that excellent presentation. So with that, I would like to invite our second speaker, Beni Suryadi, who is the manager of the Fossil Fuels, Alternative Energy, and Energy Storage Department at the ASEAN Center for Energy, or ACE. That's an intergovernmental agency organization within the ASEAN structure, and he will present on Indonesia.
Thank you very much, Meredith. I hope my sound is clear enough. Hello, everyone. Good evening from Jakarta, Indonesia. It's a really great honor for me to be invited in this important event. And in this opportunity that I would like to share about the carbonization plan here in the Southeast Asia region, and particularly in Indonesia. Next slide, please. But before going deeper, a bit more introduction about the organization that I'm representing. It's called the ASEAN Center for Energy. As Meredith mentioned that this organization is representing the interests of the 10 countries in the Southeast Asia region on the energy cooperation. Most of the times, the easiest way for me to introduce our organization is looks like the IEA. While IEA is global level, ASEAN Center for Energy, or ACE, is at the regional level here in the Southeast Asia, and we support policymakers in 10 countries in this region in designing and implementing their energy policy and planning. Next slide, please. In the slide 3, it's a bit complex structure that you see, but I just want to show that energy is just one of part of the story. It's just part of the biggest structure that we have. As it also showing that how we collaborate not only within various stakeholders and on the energy issue, but also with other stakeholders. So meaning to say cross sectoral collaboration, as we understand addressing the energy and energy and climate change issue cannot be isolated from the other issue. This is the same case as now we are doing our work on the net zero aspiration. We cannot look it at from perspective of energy only, but also need to have a comprehensive approach, even though it's become a problem that we have today, which I will share later. Next slide, please. In this slide 4, to briefly introduce to you our regional blueprint. So here in the Southeast Asia region, each country have their national law on the energy policy, while at the regional level, the 10 countries in the Southeast Asia region, guided by a regional blueprint, or what we call it ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation. So the current version is for the period of 2021 until 2025. This regional blueprint was approved and endorsed by 10 countries in the region through an annual meeting attended by 10 ministers on energy in this region. And it's addressed the issue on the energy security, accessibility, affordability, and sustainability for all, covering all energy sectors in the 10 countries in the region. And as we are very diverse here in the region, Indonesia has a different geographical characteristic, different priorities on the energy or in the economy in general with the other countries like the Singapore or with the other countries like Malaysia. Then here we are in this region adopting that all fields of policy. This is translated into the 7 program area that we have that address all of the issue of energy, starting with the ASEAN power grids to where the aspiration is to have a full integration of the cross-border electricity in the region, Trans-ASEAN gas pipeline, on the security of supply on natural gas and LNG in the region, and also other sectors of program area like coal and clean coal technology, energy efficiency and conservation, renewable energy, and civilian nuclear energy, as well as the collaboration on regional energy policy and planning. Next slide, please. So as we are supporting the countries on their energy transition plan and eventually on their aspiration toward the net zero, we at the ASEAN Center for Energy develop one product or one study on what we call it the ASEAN Energy Outlook. So the ASEAN Energy Outlook reflect the desire of the countries here in the region, be it Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia, or other countries, to understand the current energy landscape and explore different opportunities and possibility for the futures. The latest version is the 6th ASEAN Energy Outlook, which was launched at the minister meeting last year. In this outlook that we look into the current situation where the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the energy sector and undermined various efforts. So the complexity of the situation we recognize is further heightened by the needs to achieve multiple policy aims at once on energy and the other priority. We at the ASEAN countries are connected to other, so the decision that's being made by one country, for example, by Indonesia, definitely not only determine the sustainability of energy in that countries or sustainability of the economy in that countries, but also have implication for the other country region and to some context at the global level. So the modeling work itself is developed by using the software. It's the Low Emission Analysis Platform, or LEAP, where we had a privilege to work directly with Charlie Hibbs, who I believe will be a speaker on the last day, and his team at the Stockholm Environment Institute. Selecting the tool for modeling the energy scenario, I mean, as we all know, is very, very challenging. And then, but also there are so many selection available. But for us in the region, we have been using LEAPS since the first outlook that we developed back like 15 years ago, including the current one, the ongoing outlook, where we also collaborate with SEI on the 7th version of the outlook, which will be presented to the minister this year. And the complexity of and variety of energy and economic structure of each country in the region, and also the level of capability and capacity of the energy modeler in the region, plus also the data constraints, make LEAP become so-called a natural choice for us in the region. But in designing that, we collaborate with the energy modeler, energy expert, the institution at every national level, including a number of the institutions under the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources in Indonesia, where we organize a number of meetings and then have an intensive work with them to develop the models so that we can reflect the national situation and national aspiration towards the regional and global commitment. And next slide, please. As we also know that key choice determine our future energy landscape. This is the same case in our modeling work. We all know that the energy demand is evolving, but the policy choice can shape it further. We all know that the future is uncertain, but scenario, so what is possible that we can achieve. So in this ASEAN Energy Outlook, we explore a number of scenarios to understand each of the possibility that countries can go in their future energy landscape. So the situation, the aspiration at the national level through the various scenarios being integrated as a single models for the regional projection. I'm not going to talk in the detail of the numbers, but here in the various scenarios that you have, you can see that not a really good story, but where we still seeing that regardless what scenario that we have, the region will still continues to rely heavily on the fossil fuel. So this is the thing that we need to understand so that we can help the countries to move forward with their energy transition plan. Next slide. It's going to be if historical trend will continue here in the region with Indonesia, with Malaysia, the other countries, energy demand in this region will be more than double in the next 20 years. And as mentioned earlier, it's still be met mainly by fossil fuels, requiring significant imports and increasing in greenhouse gas emission. Despite that, we recognize at the national levels as being translated in their policy in the national level that the strong renewable energy, the strong energy efficiency policy are pivotal solution to reduce dependency on the fossil fuels. The work on the modeling on what we're doing takes a bottom-up approach in the various scenario so that it allows each country to adjust and modify their models and ensure that it reflects their expectation, priorities, and strategy. Next slide. Next slide is on the regional commitment. So as mentioned that at the national level, each country have their target, their policy. Take for example, Indonesia that aspiring to have 23% of renewable energy in their energy mix by 2025. And then we also have other countries like Malaysia targeting around 20,000 megawatt of renewable energy for the few coming years. This is then being translated into the model for the regional level. In addition to the regional commitment or regional target that we have to achieve also renewable energy share by 23% by 2025 on the whole energy mix, and particular on the power sectors around 35% in 2025 as well, in addition to the target on the energy efficiency. Next slide. This is where we are projecting the possibility and achievement of our target at regional level, be it on renewable energy or be it in energy efficiency, in various scenarios that we have. There are a good story that we share on the energy intensity reduction, but for renewable energy, it's still quite a gap. A significant effort is needed at the national levels, particularly for some countries, big countries, who very much influence the direction of the region, such as Indonesia, to achieve that target in the next 3 or 4 years. Next slide. But a good news that we have, despite the pandemic situation that country experienced here in the Southeast Asia region, like other countries around the world, but we here in the region managed to deliver a groundbreaking performance in 2020. Approximately around 22 gigawatt of the capacity, power capacity, was added in 2020, and 82% of the new capacity was renewable energy. It's mostly contributed by the significant increment in Vietnam, with its soaring increasing on the solars. If we look in the Indonesia context, despite of its big potential, it's very small contribution to the countries, to the regional development back in 2020. Next slide, please. As now everyone is on board for the energy transition, so countries eager for the energy transition for the next 4 and 5 years, there is expectation or planning that we will have 60% of the new installed capacity will be coming from renewable energy. So this is, I mean, a special note that this is based on the PDP last year, the Power Development Plan last year, not including the recent commitment that country being met at the COP26, or the recent update on the Power Development Plan also by several countries, such as in Vietnam or in the Philippines, where they set a new target on and set an ambitious target for the solar and wind, and also from Indonesia, where in the recent new electricity supply business plan, bigger share is given to renewable energy. All of this will help ASEAN to achieve its target by 2025. Next slide. And like everyone else in the world, that ASEAN is also aspiring to go to work toward net zeros. A number of countries are advancing their plan, especially post COP26. Today, almost all of the ASEAN nations have announced net zero pledge, accounting for about 91% of the region carbon emission. But maintaining the pace of this growing emission and seizing the emerging decarbonization opportunity are essentials at the path toward achieving the net zero in the region is narrow and brief. Next slide, please. For the several remaining slides, I will focus my presentation on the case of Indonesia. Speaking at the COP26 last year, the Indonesian Minister on Energy give Indonesian commitment to the net zero emission. Indonesia commitments to the climate change mitigation is reinforced by the formulation of a number of policy, especially in the energy sectors. Indonesia has set the targets for the emission reduction and net zero emission by 2060 or sooner. And to fulfill the target set out in the document of the long-term strategy for the low carbon and climate resilient, the ministry has formulated a roadmap to 2060. In the screen, you may see that a stepwise approach on a 5 years basis that how Indonesia would like to achieve this net zero aspiration. Next slide, please. And particularly on the power sectors, on the electricity supply plan, the government of Indonesia and PLN, the national power utility, October last year that released the new electricity business plan, which set out the Indonesian future power capacity and network development plan until 2030s and move forward until 2060. This new plan marked a turning point in the country's energy transition. For the first time, renewable energy accounted for half of the new plan, so that as it is integrated on the vision of the government to achieve the net zero in 2060s. So you see in the screens the majority of it expecting coming from solar, which is quite a significant amount. Next slide, please.
So Suryadi, if it's possible to wrap up in the next 4 to 5 minutes, so we have a couple minutes for discussion. Thank you.
Sure. Yes. Addition of the renewable energy definitely in tandem with the coal phase out. So this is how it's being translated to support the aspiration on the net zero. Next slide, please. Eventually, it's just translated into the emission reduction, where expected to reduce from the business as usual. But you can see that there is still a number there, the emission to be generated in 2016, mostly coming from the demand side. And I will speak more on that issue in the next slide, where we highlighted on the limitation of challenging that we have in doing the modeling work, be it at the national level in Indonesia or at regional levels in ASEAN. So it is a number of issues that we listed, starting that makes us, I mean, it's going to be on the challenge that we have, like the data availabilities and the breakdown that we have, and also the cumulative numbers or data availability on the cross-sectorals, because as we trying to modeling the energy system, that the issue that we have also, for example, that the data on consumption on the oil and transport sector is sitting within the Ministry of Energy. It's not sitting with the Ministry of Energy. So there is a gap of a process between this country, and then when the Ministry of Energy developing that models, there is a challenge to do it properly with this data limitation. Then the second issue on the modeler that we have, from our experience, there are very few number of people who can label it as the energy modeler in every single country in the region, including Indonesia. And many of them are also not only as a modeler, but also involving the other roles. So this put a challenge to do the energy modeling work in the proper way. And not only that, there is also the capacity levels. Many of them is not a proper background education, was not being trained well as the energy modeler. This is causes trouble when they are translating or when they are doing the energy modeling work. Then the other issue is on the modeling approach interpretation between the sectoral and integrated. So we have seen that also a case where Indonesia, the Ministry of Transport is designing their own energy planning modeling, which is look at the transport sector. And then while the Ministry of Energy is looking also in the power sectors, while in many cases this is not integrated each others, then we may see there is a gap, there is a mismatch between the finding that we have between each party. Last but not least is also on the external tools, on the selection of tools. I mean, here in our Southeast Asia region, most of the case, the selection of the tools of the modeling, not because that modeling is the most fit for our needs, but in many cases, we use that modeling because that's the modeling tools that being provided by a partner who funding the program. So if the program is funding by partner X, then the tools that being used is the tools belong to the partners X, regardless whether it suits or not with the needs or with the situation of that countries. And this is also happened like for the case, I mean, example case, the Ministry of Energy, like Argentina, I mean, they also have a modeling with Baltimore, and that can be at them. But I mean, while it's good to use it, but it's also driven by the directive of selection by the funding agency or the partners who use that. So, and then also the scenario is also most of the case being pushed or being designed by the external or the partner who funded that kind of program. So this is the issue that we have why is that not really comprehensive approach. And my last slide is just to address a final issue on my last slide, on the slide 18, where to balance the work on energy modeling on addressing the issue that we have on energy security, affordability, and accessibility in a good balance with the issue of sustainable energy. To many contexts, the modeling work that being done is also being pushed to only addressing one issue while the other issue being left out in the case. So with that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much again for the opportunity and happy to have a follow-up discussion. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So we welcome anyone to put questions into the chat. In the meantime, I wanted to share one comment that we received back from Dr. Abdul Wahid regarding the question that Clarice had posted. So he mentions that in Nigeria, the model is expanding to 2100 and taking the commitment of the government in achieving the net zero target by 2060. So that's great information. Thank you. Let's see, Clarice, have you seen some additional questions come in the chat for Mr. Suryadi?
So I'm not seeing additional questions in the chat. I do have one. Thank you very much for that presentation. So my question was if you would find it helpful to include additional sectors and technologies in your modeling, such as the non-CO2 emissions and carbon capture and storage, for example. That question is for Mr. Suryadi.
All right, thank you. Yes, definitely that would be a great addition. I mean, that's the current modeling so that we have is have a limited capability to address that issue. So I mean, while like energy storage is definitely significant to add to the modeling, because as you see that for power plant supply there is a significant solar addition. It's going to be, but as we all know, the case that we have in the solar, that's too much, that there is a need of proper storage, but it's not being reflected in the model we that with the limitation of the modeling tools that we have at this point. So that will be very, very helpful for us to be added.
Thank you very much. Meredith, I am seeing a couple of questions in the chat.
Yes, and I think it may make sense to take them. So what time do we have to wrap this for the closing of the session? We have another 5 minutes or just a minute?
We're good. No, we're good. You can take another 5 minutes.
Okay. So to Pak Budi, we have a comment, and I'm taking this first because it's on Indonesia. I noticed that Indonesia has several energy transition modeling, PLN, LTS, LCCR, and LCDI, in addition to NDC target. Do they align with each other? So I think that's very similar to one of the questions we had from Nigeria. Can you address that?
Yes and no. I mean, it's going to be I mean, like there are a number of institutions working on that. It's going to be like the Minister of Energy developing the national modeling board, the PLN using Baltimore, and then we have utilities developing the planning with the black source and other modeling tool, and then the other agency, National Planning Agency, with the LEAP models. I mean, there are, as I say, that I mean, there are some parts that are quite aligned because they're very high direction, like the ministerial statement to make all this aligned. But in reality, I mean, in the cases, many of them is mismatched in other. So some cases, because they're not using the same data as they do, I mean, it's going to be on the other case, they have a different assumption that being made, which is not communicated in data. So, I mean, we bring, there's also see that Ministry of the Environment making a statement about the net zero, but then while the ministry in the certain years, while the Ministry of Energy is looking at another year to be aligned, it's going to be. So in reality, there is I mean, mismatch is. There are some mismatch, but this is the effort we are trying to do now, having a coordination between the ministry and the district institution being involved. And at some point is also, despite the different tools will have a different result or different modeling work, but we're trying to so far harmonize it in data, so it doesn't tell too much different the story between one and the other.
Yeah, I know that's a great point. And I know in several countries, they've used intermodal comparison to understand, make sure you're harmonizing some of the inputs and understand why there are differences so that you get a more complete story to tell to policymakers about the results. So thank you. That's extremely helpful. For Dr. Ahmed, there's also a question in the chat. You mentioned earlier modeling efforts with other tools, for example, Message, but you're currently using the adoption of the UK calculator in order to explore easily a wide range of outcomes. Will you try to connect the earlier tools back to the new insights from the calculator for deeper dive analysis? Thanks.
Thank you very much. The weather tool, the Message and the net tool that we are using right now, we are updating another studies using this Message and net tool. The last studies conducted with this tool is in 2016, 2017. But the cost of the dynamics and changes, we are updating the studies using this tool to get another story of the net zero, which we will use the Message tool with the 2050 calculator, adapted 20 calculator, and the tool used by McKinsey, and harmonize and get a good energy transition plan and very good pathway. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing additional questions in the chat, and I realize we're coming close to the end of our time. So I wanted once again to thank both of our excellent speakers for their really helpful insights and hard work in preparing these presentations. I also see a question that Nanjo has just popped into the chat for Beni. Is Gunter, is there time for that, or should we?
Go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
So the question is about demand end-use sector targets and plans such as for cooling, major appliances, or electric vehicles. Would you have any thoughts on that, Beni?
Yes, thank you. I mean, for the cooling, I mean, there are on the end sectors, there are MEPS, minimum basic performance standards being implemented, and then there is a labeling for the several household appliance. It can be starting with the refrigerators and air cooling. It's starting to be implemented at the mandatory basis in Indonesia. There is a target wise in stepwise in 2023, 2025, and then the 2030s that's being applicable. And yeah, not in Indonesia, several countries, the region is also have that specific target on the end sectors. Most of it is targeting industrial and residential sector, because this is the two major sectors that consume high intensity energy in the region. I hope I address it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think with that, I will turn it back over to Gunter and Clarice. Thank you.
So thank you, Meredith, and thank you to our speakers from Nigeria and Indonesia for the presentations on priorities and approaches for decarbonization and sharing many great insights. So that concludes this session. Let me turn it over to Gunter to wrap up and see if he has any closing remarks.
Yes, thank you, Meredith. Thank you, Clarice. So yeah, we're at the end of our first day. So I think I hope you walked away from this very first day with a clear sense of an excitement that is prevalent across all of the participants in this new initiative. About the opportunities to assist and add value to what you do in your country. And so we look forward to continuing that, not only throughout this workshop now for the next 2 days, but really beyond the workshop. You know, you've heard from Argonne's lab director. I mean, the Argonne team is excited, just as all the other teams at all the other 9 national laboratories. You've heard the excitement that is there within the Department of Energy from Maria. You know, we've heard from Henri, who's from the IAEA, that has a very similar, very complementary vision of going forward with engaging with their member states. And so, as much as we can, hopefully, we can leverage each other's activities because there's a lot of complementarity in there. And then you've of course heard from Ron Benioff, the executive director of the Net Zero World Action Center, his vision about what the next steps are going forward and the types of engagements that we will see, as well as from Mario about the tool support and the training support and capacity building support that the IAEA provides on an ongoing basis. And so, of course, lastly, we've heard from our 2 speakers, and just like Meredith and Clarice, I want to thank everyone, the country presenters, as well as all the other previous speakers from today, for all their work to get this ready. I think it was an exciting first day. We're pretty much coming to a close now. So I thank you again for logging in, for joining this workshop today. And we look forward to having you join us again tomorrow, same time. And we will start out with 3 country presentations from Egypt, Argentina, and Chile. So with this, I'm closing out the workshop and I hope to see you tomorrow again. Thank you.